Welcome to Rates and Ratios. Let's talk about some definition first before we begin. A ratio simply is a way to use division to compare two numbers. You can write ratios three different ways. A to B, or should I say A divided by B, A dot dot B, and A to B. All three ways you can use to display a ratio. And as you can see, that the actual first one simulates a fraction. And of course we know from the past that a fraction is simply some number divided by a number. Ratios that have the same value are called equivalent ratios. Example, 9 to 5 and 18 to 10. Okay. We also know, or we should know, or we want to know, that rates are ratios. We're still comparing two quantities, but they have different units. Two rates are equivalent if they have the same value. And a unit rate is a rate that has a denominator of 1. And in order for you to write a unit rate, you have to find an equivalent rate with a denominator of 1. So what we're just simply saying that when you look at a unit rate is also a ratio, and a rate also is a ratio, but they just have other meanings as well. So you can refer back to this as we go through it. Something else that I want you to think about as we go through these units here for the second 6 weeks is we want to make sure that you're taking notes in class, also taking notes coming back when you do the after school or home video segment. Make sure that you're taking notes, and when we're sitting in class, make sure you participate. Ask questions about things you don't understand and write these answers in your notes. Okay, so you want to make sure that you do this and then take your notes home. I think it's not a good thing when we leave our notes in class, because now we're not doing any studying whatsoever. Okay, so let's get back to what we were talking about. Now, the first example that we want to look at with these rates and ratios is writing a ratio. Okay, so what we have is we have this ski resort. So we have a ski resort, and the ski resort has a certain amount of trails for people to ski. So we have 15 easy scales. That's something that if I go, that's what I'll have to partake. We have 25 intermediate scale trails. Okay, and we have 7 difficult. Now, only thing we're doing here is just plotting out some information that we're going to use. It's going to be a spelling error if I leave it here like that. And this C-U-L-T. And then we also have 11 experts. 11 expert trails. So we're having minor issues with what we are trying to display, but we'll get it together. For whatever reason. Okay, so as we look at this, let's see, can we find a ratio that shows us our intermediate to easy trails. So the ratio that we're looking for is intermediate to easy. And notice how I'm going to write this. I'm going to write this intermediate dot easy. I could have wrote it intermediate over easy, but I thought, oh, we might be thinking about cooking. But anyway, so here we go, and we're going to look to see what do our table of information tells us. So our information tells us that we will have 25, which is the number of, oh, I see what my actual problem could be. Bear with me for 1 second. That seemed like it could be. I'm going to change colors just to make sure. Okay, so according, if I go back and look at what I wrote, 25 intermediate, 15 easy, so I'm looking for intermediate first, so it's going to be, yes, that is much better, 25 to 15. Now that's because I wrote it just the way this is, but it's also say that we can write it 25 to 15, or we can write it, and I prefer beginning this way, 25 to 15, and then this way we can go right ahead and simplify it, and we can think about how can we simplify it. Well, if we look at our numerator and our denominator, and what we're trying to do is find the greatest common factor that'll divide, just like we were trying to simplify the fraction. So I would take 25, and we're going to divide by 5, and then we're going to take 15, and we're going to divide by 5, and then we'll see that we will easily get 5 over 3. So our equivalent ratio of this would be 5 to 3, or 5 to 3, and of course we have that one. Okay, let's see, can we take a look at one quick one before our 15 minutes dissipate, and that's if we wanted to find an equivalent ratio. So again, we're looking at as far as equivalent ratio are ratios that have the same value. Now on here we want to take a look at some conversion, and we're talking about here, let's take a look at an example. If we say lightning strike, we say lightning strikes about, let's say 100 times per second. And what we want to find out is how many times does it strike per minute. So if we say it strikes 100 times per second, we want to think about, well, if we want to look at comparing it to minutes, we have to do some conversion. So let's say we know that 60 seconds equals to 1 minute. Okay, so we know that. All right, so we can write this as 60 seconds. Notice I am putting here my units, and 1 minute. Okay, so now we need to determine how can we work this particular equation to make it equivalent if we're talking about lightning strike per second. So let's go back and rewrite what it tells us. It tells us that lightning strike 100 times, notice where I'm writing this, I'm getting this just from right here. This is where I'm getting this information from. 100 times, and I'm writing it per, that's my line, 100 times per second. Per, let's say it's 1 per 1 second. Okay. Okay, so now we need to determine how these rate. So let's go ahead and multiply that times 60 seconds, and that's per 1 minute. Now, as we look at this, what we need to do is get rid of, and we can factor out the seconds. So seconds, seconds. Now what that's going to leave us with, and I want to bring you over here if you don't mind with me. That's going to leave us 100 times 60, and that's going to be over 1 times 1 minute. Now, as we go ahead and solve this, 100 times 60 will give us 6,000 times, little this line, we are definitely doing some time, but we'll work more of these. I'll give you absolutely an opportunity to. And that's going to be 1 time 1 minute is 1 minute. So what we've done is we've created an equivalent ratio by saying if lightning strikes 100 times per second and it's 60 seconds in 1 minute, so evidently it strikes a total of 6,000 times per minute. Okay, we're comparing seconds to minutes. All right, see you soon.